welcome to a story where time moves as gently as the steam rising from a cup of tea. Tonight, we visit a royal family known not for their jewels, but for their endless love of tea. So sit back, relax, and sip your own cup, if you have one, as we delve into the slow, soothing world of tea making. In the heart of a grand royal palace lies a kitchen unlike any other. It's a room full of delicate teapots, porcelain cups, and shimmering tea bags. The walls are lined with shelves holding countless varieties of tea, from deep amber to soft green hues. The air smells of warm leaves and the steam that rises from them as they infuse the water, filling the room with a calm, almost sacred warmth. The princess, with her long fingers, gently reaches for the most ornate teapot. It's made of fine porcelain, decorated with a delicate pattern of lavender blooms. Almost as if they had blown just this morning, she lifts the lid with a soft clink, placing it on the counter with care. The water, already at the perfect temperature, is poured slowly over the tea leaves, making a soft bubbling sound as it swirls and dances inside the pot as the tea begins to steep. The room fills with the comforting scent of freshly brewed leaves. The ritual is slow, deliberate, each movement of the princess calculated, yet effortless, as if she's done this 1,000 times before. She checks the clock. Another minute to wait. She gently taps the teapot, listening for the sound of the leaves moving inside, as if to confirm that they are steeping just right. With a contented sigh, she places the teapot back on its base, allowing the liquid to reach its full flavor. The soft glow from the chandelier reflects off the cups, which are equally delicate with small, intricate designs that mimic the gentle flow of tea leaves. The princess smiles, her eyes closing as she inhales the aroma, taking a moment before she pours the first cup for herself. Round her, the royal family gathers at the long, grand table. Each one of them holds their cup in both hands, cradling it as though it holds more than just tea, it holds time itself. Slowly, they sip, their expressions softening as the warmth spreads through them, filling them with peace. The older king takes a slow breath, savoring the taste. Feeling the warmth seep through his chest, "It's perfect," he murmurs, his voice deep and calm. They sit in silence, each one reflecting on the richness of the moment. Then, when the cup is empty, they do not rush to refill it. Instead, the princess stands, a serene look on her face, and returns to the teapot. She repeats the process, the gentle clink of the lid, the slow pouring, comforting whir of the water mingling with the leaves. Each step is drawn out, each action filled with purpose. The tea is served again, each sip taken with the same care and attention. The room falls into an eternal loop of tea, each cycle a reminder of the peaceful moments they share. Cups are emptied, the teapot refilled, and as the family drinks together, time feels as though it's stretching, never rushing, never ending. The tea making continues. Indefinitely, the family remains seated in their quiet world, silently, enjoying their cups as the gentle sounds of the kitchen hum around them. The warmth from the tea, the comfort from the ritual, the peaceful silence, it all lingers, floating in the air forever. The room in the royal palace remained still and quiet, like a painting frozen in time. The only movement was the gentle clinking of the teacups being set down on the marble table, and the soft flicker of the candlelight that seemed to dance in tune with the steady rhythm of the tea-making process. There was no hurry, no rush, only the slow, deliberate movements of the royal family as they settled into the timeless ritual that had been passed down through generations. The princess, her fingers delicate and graceful, was the heart of this tranquil scene. She moved with an ease that suggested she had lived her entire life in the company of tea, its aroma, its warmth, its calming embrace. She had learned the art of tea making from her mother, who had inherited it from her mother before her. It was a practice so sacred to the family that it had become part of their legacy, a tradition woven into the very fabric of the palace's history. Tonight, as the princess moved from one task to another, the air was filled with a sense of serenity. The clinking sound of the teapot lid, the soothing pour of hot water into the pot, and the soft rustle of the tea leaves as they unfurled in the warmth of the water were the only sounds to be heard. There were no grand conversations, no urgent discussions, just the gentle hum of a family united by the simple joy of tea. As the tea steeped in the pot, the princess took a moment to observe the soft ripples in the water. She marveled at how the leaves swirled and danced with each other, as if they too were caught in a slow, eternal waltz. The water was a deep amber color now, and the fragrance was rich and inviting. She knew it was ready. She had been steeping tea for years, and by now, she could tell the moment it reached perfection without so much as a second thought. With practiced hands, she poured the tea into the first cup, the liquid flowing smoothly from the teapot like a river finding its course. The cup was delicate, made of porcelain so fine it could easily be mistaken for a piece of art. Princess held the cup for a moment, allowing herself to inhale the fragrance before she took the first sip. Her lips met the cup, and as the tea touched her tongue, she felt an immediate sense of warmth and calm settle over her. The warmth of the tea spread through her chest, slowly unfurling like a flower blooming in the spring. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, savoring the simplicity of the moment. It was a luxury. Really, this act of taking time to appreciate the little things like tea, and the quiet company of family, and yet it was in these small moments that true peace was found. The king, seated beside her, smiled as he watched her. His own cup was filled next, and he, too, inhaled the soothing aroma before sipping. The tea felt like an old friend to him, comforting and familiar. He had been drinking it for as long as he could remember, and each cup was as soothing as the last. The queen, sitting across from him, took her own cup, her fingers brushing gently over the rim. She glanced at her daughter, the princess, with a look of quiet pride. "How is it, my dear?" she asked softly, her voice a tender whisper. "It's perfect, mother," the princess replied, her voice warm with affection. "As always," the queen nodded with a smile, her eyes twinkling in the soft candlelight. "I am glad. The tea making is an art, after all. It's not just the tea itself, but the time spent making it, care with which it is brewed, the love put into every step." The princess smiled, grateful for her mother's wisdom. "I understand now, more than ever, how true that is." The room fell into a peaceful silence as the family continued to sip their tea. The royal servants, accustomed to the routine, had long since learned to move quietly around the room, ensuring that no interruptions disturbed the tranquility of the moment. They knew better than to speak, to rush, or to hurry. This time was sacred, and they respected it. As the tea was finished, the princess stood and, with a slight nod from the king, she began the process of brewing another pot. Her movements were graceful, precise, each one as deliberate as the last. She reached for the teapot she had chosen earlier, her fingers tracing the delicate floral pattern as if it were a treasure. The lid was removed with a soft click, and the princess placed it gently on the counter. A kettle of water, steaming and ready, was poured into the pot with a satisfying hiss. The leaves, carefully chosen for their subtlety, were placed inside, their scent filling the room like a warm embrace. She waited, as always, for the tea to steep to perfection. The minutes passed slowly, each one stretching out in the quiet silence. The royal family sat in their respective places, their cups empty but their minds full of calm contentment. There was no need for conversation, no need for anything more than the gentle process of tea-making. As the tea brewed, the princess's thoughts drifted. She thought of the generations of royal women who had sat in this very kitchen, each of them carrying on the tradition of tea-making. How many had come before her, brewing tea with the same care, the same reverence, passing down this timeless ritual from mother to daughter, from one generation to the next. How many had sat at this table just as she was now, savoring the warmth of the tea, finding solace in its simplicity. It was a humbling thought. She was part of something far greater than herself, a link in an unbroken chain that stretched back through time, and she too would one day pass on this tradition to her own children, teaching them the art of tea-making just as her mother had taught her. Princess smiled at the thought. For now, though, she was content to be here in this moment, with her family sharing tea in peace. After a few moments, the princess poured the tea into the cups, each one filled with the rich amber liquid that had become so familiar to them all. Family resumed their slow, deliberate sips, each person taking their time to enjoy the taste and warmth of the tea. As the cups were emptied once more, the cycle continued. The tea was poured again, the lid was replaced on the teapot with a soft click, and the warmth of the tea filled the room once more. Each step was done with the same care, the same attention to detail. It was a never-ending cycle, a quiet rhythm that kept the family connected, grounded in the simplicity of tea. And so, the evening wore on. The royal family sat together, drinking tea, savoring its warmth, and enjoying the peaceful silence that enveloped them. There was no need for words, no need for anything more. They were content in the moment, united in their love for tea and for each other. tea continued to be brewed, served, and savored, and the evening stretched out in a timeless dance of peaceful moments. The room, filled with the soft flicker of candlelight, seemed suspended in time, as if the tea itself had slowed the clock, allowing the family to remain in this gentle, perfect moment forever, and perhaps in some ways they would. For as long as the tea was made, as long as the cups were filled and emptied, the memory of this night, of this simple, sacred ritual would live on. It would live on in the princess, in the king, and in the queen, and in the generations that would follow, who would sit in the same room, drinking tea, savoring its warmth, and feeling the quiet joy of the ritual. And so, the tea-making continued, never truly ending, a perfect, peaceful loop that would last forever. As the night wore on, the royal family's tea ritual continued, but there was a subtle shift in the air. The quiet stillness of the kitchen, the gentle clink of teacups, and the soft rustle of the tea leaves were still present. But beneath the surface, something deeper was stirring. The princess, who had always felt at peace with the tea ritual, found herself questioning the endless loop of tranquility. Her mind wandered to the world outside the kingdom, the affairs of the court, and the responsibilities that awaited her. The weight of her future as heir to the throne began to seep into her thoughts, as she moved gracefully, filling cups and pouring tea with the same precision as always. Her movements felt somehow more deliberate, almost hesitant. Her mind raced, wondering what lay beyond the quiet walls of the kitchen, where tea was brewed and sipped in perfect harmony. What was the cost of this serenity? Could she remain untouched by the weight of the crown forever? Would she ever get the chance to live freely without the expectations of duty and royalty? The queen, ever perceptive to her daughter's shifts in mood, noticed the subtle change. Had always been able to read the princess's thoughts without a word being spoken, and tonight was no different. The queen's eyes lingered on her daughter for a moment before she quietly set her teacup down and rose from her seat. "My dear," the queen said softly, breaking the silence that had enveloped the room, "is something troubling you?" The princess hesitated for a moment, her fingers resting lightly on the edge of the teapot. She had always tried to protect her family from the weight of her inner turmoil, but she knew her mother saw through her. "I'm not sure," the princess admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It feels as if something is pulling me away from here, from all of this." The queen's gaze softened, understanding. She walked over to her daughter, her presence warm and calming. Taking the princess's hands in her own, she spoke with the same care and wisdom that had shaped the family for generations. "Child, you have always been the heart of this palace, the one who carries our traditions with grace and dignity," the queen said, her voice firm yet tender. "But the world beyond these walls calls to you. I can see that. It's only natural for you to wonder about your place in it. You are not just a princess who brews tea, you are a woman with your own dreams and desires. It's time for you to explore those dreams." The princess looked into her mother's eyes, searching for the words that had eluded her all night. She felt a deep ache in her chest, the pull between her duty and her yearning for something more. "I don't want to disappoint anyone," she whispered. "I don't want to let go of this, of the tradition, but I also want to know what it's like to be free of it, just for a while." The queen squeezed her daughter's hands gently, offering her comfort. "You are allowed to step away, my dear. Sometimes even the most sacred traditions need to be questioned. It is only by stepping away that we can truly appreciate what they mean." The princess nodded slowly, the weight of her mother's words settling deep within her. The moment felt transformative, like the first sip of tea after a long day, warm and reassuring, yet brimming with the promise of change. Just then, the king, who had been silent until now, rose from his seat. His expression, usually composed and calm, was now edged with a slight furrow of concern. He had overheard the conversation and could sense the turning point in the air. "My queen, my daughter," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "This family has always been bound by more than just our blood. It is bound by the traditions we honor, the legacy we carry forward. But I agree with your mother. The world outside calls, and it is time for you, my dear princess, to find your own path." The princess's heart swelled with a mixture of relief and fear. Could she truly step away from the family's legacy, the weight of 1,000 years of tradition? Could she walk away from the very ritual that had defined her life? "I've spent my life in this palace, learning the art of tea-making, learning the language of tradition," she said quietly. "But I want to learn the language of the world. I want to experience it, live it, Want to know what it feels like to be a part of something bigger than just this room? This kingdom. The king nodded, a glint of pride in his eyes. Then go. But know this, our traditions will always be with you wherever you go. And when the time comes for you to return, the teapot will always be waiting for you, just as it is tonight. The princess's heart lifted with a newfound sense of freedom. The thought of stepping outside the palace walls, of exploring the world beyond her royal duties, felt like a vast open sky full of possibilities. And yet there was a part of her that was reluctant to let go of the comfort of the familiar. Her eyes met her mother's, and the queen gave a small, knowing smile. Go, my child, drink the tea of the world, and when you are ready, come back to us. But remember, this tea, this tradition, will always be a part of you. It is not just the act of brewing, it is the warmth, the love, the care. It lives inside of you. With her mother's words echoing in her heart, the princess stood and made her way toward the door. She turned to face her family one last time before leaving the room, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to fully embrace the moment, the tea, the ritual, the family. They would always be a part of her, but tonight she was ready to step into a world where tea was no longer the center of her universe, and the kingdom was no longer the only story she would write. As she stepped out of the palace and into the cool night air, the princess felt a sense of exhilaration wash over her. The world outside was vast and uncertain, but it was hers to discover. She breathed deeply, inhaling the crisp night air, and for the first time in a long time, she felt truly alive. But as she walked away from the palace, she knew that one day she would return. The tea would still be there, waiting for her. The family would still be there, awaiting her presence, ready to embrace her with the warmth of their love. The traditions would remain as they always had, and she would find her way back to them. When the time was right, the path ahead was unknown, but the princess was ready to embrace it. She had stepped out of the shadows of her royal heritage and into the light of her own story. And as she journeyed into the unknown, she knew that tea, with its quiet rituals and timeless warmth, would always be waiting for her. And so, the princess walked, her heart full of dreams, her soul free, and the soft, comforting rhythm of tea-making still echoing in her mind as the world unfolded before her. As the princess walked further away from the palace, the night sky stretched above her. Like a canvas, its stars twinkling like the scattered thoughts in her mind. Each step felt like a new chapter, a journey that would shape her in ways she could not yet comprehend. The soft crunch of gravel beneath her feet was a comforting reminder of the path. She was choosing a path that, while uncertain, felt invigorating. The palace, now a distant silhouette in the background, seemed to fade with each step she took. Yet, as much as she felt the pull of freedom, there was still a faint echo of the familiar, the clink of the teacup, the warmth of the teapot, the quiet whispers of the family. They lingered in her heart like the aftertaste of the finest tea, a flavor she could never quite forget. But tonight she was determined to taste something new. The cool night air nipped at her skin, urging her to move faster. She knew she could not turn back, not now. Not when the world outside the palace walls beckoned her so forcefully. There was so much to see, to experience. She imagined the vast cities beyond the kingdom, the people who lived there, the bustling marketplaces, the endless horizons. It was as though a door had opened in her life, and she was stepping through it into the unknown, where every moment held the promise of discovery. As she walked through the palace gardens, a shadow caught her. It was the royal butler, an elderly man who had served the family for decades. His graying hair and sharp, kind eyes had witnessed many royal ceremonies, many changes. But tonight, his gaze held something different. Concerned. Princess, he called softly, stepping forward from the shadows, his voice respectful yet filled with a quiet urgency. She stopped, her heart skipping a beat. Yes, Mr. Faulkner. The butler bowed his head slightly, his face creased with both age and wisdom. I know you seek to explore the world beyond, but I must ask you to consider this carefully. Your decision, while brave, will change everything. There is much waiting for you here in the kingdom, much that needs your leadership. The princess sighed, feeling the weight of his words. She had been prepared for this, the questions, the concerns, but hearing them out loud made them feel more real, more pressing. I know, Mr. Faulkner, she replied, her voice soft but firm. I have lived my whole life within these walls, and I must know what lies beyond them. I need to understand who I am outside of this kingdom, outside of the title I was born into. I need to see the world, to live freely, even if only for a while. Mr. Faulkner studied her for a moment, his eyes softening. I understand, he said quietly. But remember this, the kingdom has always been in your blood. You are the future of this family, the future of the throne. The world may be vast, but there are some things you cannot escape. No matter how far you go, the princess felt a pang of guilt, but she held his gaze. I will return, Mr. Faulkner, I promise. But I must find myself first. I cannot lead a kingdom if I do not know who I am. The butler nodded slowly, a hint of sadness in his eyes. Then I will pray for your safe journey, your highness. May the world show you what you seek, and may you return stronger for it. With a final bow, he turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving the princess standing alone in the moonlight. The silence that followed felt heavier now, more profound. The weight of her decision pressed against her chest, but she stood tall, resolute. She was ready the following morning as the first rays of the sun stretched over the horizon. The princess packed her belongings, the servants, having been informed of her decision, bustled quietly around her, preparing her for the journey ahead. There was no grand farewell, no elaborate ceremony. The decision had been made swiftly, decisively. Her mother and father had given her their blessing, but the queen's eyes held a mix of pride and sorrow, while the king, ever the stoic ruler, had simply nodded with quiet understanding. She knew they had their own reservations, their own fears, but they had respected her choice. They had, in their own way, allowed her to leave, to carve her own path, and so she stood at the gates of the palace, the guards standing at attention as she prepared to step into the unknown. With a final glance at the towering walls, at the familiar stone and ivy that had been her world for so long, she turned away, stepping forward into the vast expanse of the world that awaited her. Her first stop was a small village at the edge of the kingdom, a place where the simplicity of life felt as foreign to her as the air itself. Here, the pace of the world was slower, quieter, and the people greeted her with warmth, but with little recognition of her royal heritage. She was not a princess here. She was just another traveler, another soul seeking something more. As she walked through the cobbled streets, her senses were assaulted by the sounds of life, laughter spilling out from small cafes, the distant clink of tools from blacksmiths, the scent of freshly baked bread mingling with the earthy smell of the market. It was chaotic, yes, but it was also alive in a way that felt new to her, as if she had just woken up from a long, comfortable sleep. She spent the first few days in the village, walking the markets, talking to the villagers, and observing the way they lived without the weight of a crown, without the expectation of leadership. They lived simply, yet joyfully, and though she missed the palace's comforts, she found herself drawn to the simplicity of their lives. On the fourth day, she sat with an elderly woman in the village square, sipping tea from a chipped cup. The woman's hands were rough with age, but her eyes were sharp and full of wisdom. She had seen many seasons, many kings and queens, and yet here she was pouring tea into a simple cup, sharing it with a stranger. "Tell me," the princess asked, her voice curious, "how do you find peace in a world that changes so quickly?" The old woman smiled, her face creased with the lines of time. "My dear," she said softly, "peace is not something you find in the world. It is something you create within yourself. The world will always change. People will come and go. But the tea, it stays the same. The ritual of making it, the warmth that brings it has been with us for centuries." The princess looked at the woman, surprised by the depth of her words. "But how do you know when you found it, when you found the peace you seek?" The old woman chuckled softly, her eyes twinkling. "It is not something you can seek out, my dear. It finds you when you are ready for it, and when it does, it will fill you like tea fills a cup, slowly, gently, until you overflow." The princess sat in silence, contemplating the woman's words. Peace. It was a concept she had always associated with the tea rituals of her family, but she had never truly understood it until now. It was not something that could be found in the external world. It had to be cultivated within. As the days passed, the princess learned more about the world she had left behind. She encountered new ideas, new perspectives, and slowly, the restless ache within her began to settle. The world was vast, yes, but it was also full of simple, quiet joys like the act of sharing tea with a stranger or the feel of the wind on her face as she walked through the countryside. And though she missed her family, She found herself returning to the kitchen in her mind, to the soft clink of the teapot, to the gentle pour of the tea. In the end, the princess realized something important. She had not left the tea behind, had taken it with her. Her journey was just beginning, but already she felt more at peace than she had ever felt before. The world was waiting for her to write her own story, and as the princess took the next step forward, she knew that when the time was right, the tea would still be there, waiting for her to return. And when that time came, she would return not as a princess, but as a woman who had learned what it meant to truly live. As the days passed, the princess traveled further from the familiar confines of the palace. Her journey had taken her through villages, bustling towns, and vast, untamed landscapes that stretched beyond the horizon. The people she met were not royalty, nor did they hold titles or wealth. Instead, they lived their lives in the quiet dance of daily routines, working the land, caring for their families, sharing stories by the fire, and in their simplicity, the princess found a freedom she had never known. One evening, after a long day of walking, the princess arrived in a small town nestled between the hills. The evening air was cool and crisp, carrying with it the scent of pine and earth. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow across the village and illuminating the surrounding forests. It was the kind of evening where everything seemed to slow down, as if the earth itself had taken a deep breath. She walked through the narrow streets, admiring the quaint houses with their thatched roofs and flower-filled windowsills. The villagers were kind but distant, their lives so intertwined with the rhythms of the land that they barely noticed the stranger who had entered their midst. She felt for the first time like she was no longer the princess. She was simply a traveler, a soul on her own path. As she reached the town center, she spotted an old stone well surrounded by a small stone wall. The well, weathered by time, had been the heart of the village for generations. The world outside the palace was different from the royal halls she had known, less grand, less structured, but it felt more real, more alive with the kind of rawness that only comes from living among people who are grounded in their everyday lives. Days turned into weeks, and the princess wandered from town to town, village to village. She wandered through lush green forests, across golden meadows, and along sparkling streams that wound through the land like ribbons of light. With each passing day, she felt herself shedding the layers of royalty, the weight of her lineage slowly lifting as she immersed herself in the simple, unhurried rhythms of life. In a small coastal village, the princess found herself staying in an old inn by the sea. The sound of the waves crashing against the cliffs was a constant companion, a lullaby that soothed her into a deep and peaceful sleep. Each night, the innkeeper, an older man with a deep, gravelly voice, noticed her quiet demeanor, and over breakfast one morning he struck up a conversation. "You're far from home, miss," the innkeeper remarked as he poured tea into a chipped ceramic cup. "Not many travelers come through here, especially ones with the look of a lady from the castle." The princess smiled softly, sipping her tea. "I'm far from many things now," she replied, her voice carrying a hint of bittersweetness. The innkeeper raised an eyebrow. "A royal hunt far from the palace and the crown. I take it you're searching for something." The princess looked out the window, her gaze distant. "I suppose I am," she said quietly. "I thought I was searching for freedom, but now I think I'm searching for peace." The innkeeper set down his cup, considering her words. He said, nodding slowly, "You won't find peace in any kingdom, miss. Peace isn't something that comes from titles or lands. It's something that settles in your heart when you've let go of all the noise and distractions and simply embrace the world as it is." The princess felt her heart tighten at his words, but in a way that was soothing, like the first sip of tea on a chilly morning. Had been searching for something for so long, and perhaps she had been looking in all the wrong places. The freedom she had longed for was not found in the absence of her title. It was found in the absence of expectations. As the days slipped by, the princess took long walks along the cliffside, where the sea met the sky in a beautiful blur of blue. The wind whispered in her ears, and she let it carry her thoughts away, just as it carried the seagull soaring above the waves. The vastness of the ocean made her feel small, but in the most comforting way, as if the world was reminding her the beauty in being a single, fleeting moment in the grand expanse of life. One afternoon, as she sat on a large rock near the water's edge, she met a young fisherman who had come to collect his catch. He was carrying a basket filled with fish, his weathered hand steady and sure as he walked toward her. The princess watched him with curiosity, fascinated by the way he moved, grounded, confident, yet entirely at ease with his place in the world. "Do you come here often?" he asked, pausing beside her. "I do," the princess replied with a soft smile. "I found a peace here I didn't know existed." The fisherman nodded knowingly. The sea has a way of doing that. It reminds us of our place. It shows us how small we really are, and in that we find a strange kind of freedom. It's the same with fishing. There's no rush, no need for things to happen faster than they do. You just cast your net and wait, and when the time comes, the fish come to you. The princess watched him for a long moment, considering his words. "It sounds so simple," she said softly. "So different from everything I've known. Life is simpler than we often make it," the fisherman said, his voice low but full of warmth. "We complicate things by thinking we need more, but the truth is, everything we need is already here in the world around us. Sometimes it's just a matter of paying attention." The princess's thoughts swirled with the fisherman's words. How many years had she spent in search of something, searching for meaning, for purpose, for peace, when perhaps it had always been there, just beyond her grasp? Was it possible that peace, real peace, came not from escaping the palace, but from accepting the simplicity of life, from embracing the quiet moments and letting them fill her heart? She realized then that her journey was not just about leaving the palace behind. It was about embracing the breeze and finding fulfillment in the small moments of life, the ones that often went unnoticed by those caught in the frenzy of living. As the sun began to set over the sea, casting a golden glow across the water, the princess stood and thanked the fisherman. She felt a deep sense of gratitude toward him for helping her see the truth that had been quietly unfolding in her heart. "I think I've learned something important today," she said to him, her voice full of appreciation. "That it's not always about finding something new. Sometimes it's about seeing what's already there in front of you." The fisherman smiled. "Exactly. The world doesn't need to be conquered. It just needs to be lived in." The princess walked back to the inn, her heart light with a new understanding. We'd come so far in her journey, both physically and emotionally, and yet it was the simplest of lessons that had brought her the most peace. Life was not something to be rushed through or solved. It was something to be experienced moment by moment. The following morning, as she sat on the edge of the cliff sipping her tea, she realized that her journey was far from over. She didn't need to search for peace anymore. It was already within her. The tea she drank, the ocean waves she listened to, and the quiet simplicity of the village were all parts of the peace she had been seeking. And though her path was still unfolding, she no longer felt lost. For the first time, she felt at home in her own heart, ready to face whatever the world would offer her next. And so she moved forward, no longer burdened by her title, but guided by the lessons she had learned. The journey ahead was still unknown, but now she was ready for it, knowing that peace was not a destination, but a way of living. The princess, once lost in the grandeur of royalty, had found herself in the simplicity of life. And in that quiet, powerful realization, she understood that no matter where she went, the world would always offer her moments of peace if only she was willing to see them. As the princess continued her journey, the world around her seemed to open up more with every passing day. The landscapes had grown wilder, the air fresher, and the people she met were more diverse, each carrying with them their own stories and ways of life. Yet, in the quietest corners of these villages and the slow rhythms of daily work, the princess began to uncover truths about herself that she had long buried under the weight of her royal duties. One morning, after days of wandering along the coastline, she found herself in a small village nestled at the base of a mountain range. The village was more secluded than any she had visited before, surrounded by towering pines and hidden from the usual flow of travelers. The people here lived in harmony with the land, farming the fertile soil and living close to nature. It was a place where the earth seemed to hold secrets, where the air tasted different, crisp, clean, almost alive. The princess entered the village at sunrise, the first light of the day spilling over the distant peaks. The streets were still, with only a few villagers going about their morning routines, chopping wood, tending to animals, and beginning the day's work. The pace was slower here, and for the first time in her journey, the princess felt a sense of belonging that had eluded her in the larger towns and cities. There was a simplicity to life here that soothed her heart, as though time itself was taking a breath out. As she walked through the village, she came across a small bakery. The warm warm scent of freshly baked bread drifting from its open window drawn. And by the smell, she stepped inside, greeted by an elderly woman behind the counter. The woman's hands were strong and weathered from years of kneading dough, yet her eyes sparkled with warmth and wisdom. "Good morning, my dear," the baker said with a kind smile. "You must be new to these parts. What brings you to our village?" The princess smiled back, feeling the kindness radiating from the woman. "I've been traveling," she replied. "I've come from far away, looking for something." Baker's eyes twinkled and she motioned to a small table by the window. Sit. I'll make you a warm slice of bread and some honey. We all need a moment of warmth, especially when we're searching for something." The princess sat at the table, grateful for the invitation. As the baker worked, she marveled at the simple, rhythmic motions of the woman's hands. It was a reminder of the steady pace of life that she had come to appreciate in these past weeks. Kind of life that didn't rush, that didn't demand, but in what could be given in a single moment. The bread was soon brought to the princess, steaming with warmth, and she tasted it with a quiet sigh of contentment. It was simple, yet perfect, the crisp, golden crust giving way to a soft, airy center. She could taste the earth in it, care and patience that had gone into every step of its creation. "Thank you," the princess said, savoring each bite. "This is wonderful." The baker nodded, sitting across from her. "It's the simple things that sustain us," she said softly. "The earth, the bread, the honey, they all come together to remind us that we don't need much to be content. It's not about the grand things, the things we chase. It's about the small moments, the ones we overlook." The princess nodded thoughtfully. "I've spent so much of my life chasing something, always looking for more. But now I see that perhaps it wasn't about the journey to find something new. Perhaps it was about learning to see the value in what was already here." The baker smiled kindly. "Sometimes the best things in life are already right in front of us. We just need to take the time to notice them. You've come far, child, but now, it's time to see things as they truly are." The princess sat back, reflecting on the woman's words. Had been searching for something she couldn't quite define. Perhaps it was freedom, or peace, or an understanding of who she truly was outside of her royal title. And now, as she sat in the small bakery with the warmth of the bread filling her senses, she realized that perhaps the search wasn't the point. The point was learning to stop and appreciate the simple beauty of each moment, each small thing that life had to offer. For the next several days, the princess stayed in the village, helping the baker with small tasks, learning the rhythms of village life. She spent mornings picking berries from the wild bushes near the river, afternoons watching the village children play, and evenings sitting by the fire, listening to the old folk tell stories of their ancestors. It was a life that felt both foreign and familiar, like something she had always known but had never truly understood until now. One evening, as the sun dipped below the mountains, painting the sky with hues of pink and orange, the village gathered in the square for a small celebration. The townspeople were preparing for a harvest festival, a time to give thanks for the bounty of the land. The air was filled with laughter and music, the scent of roasting meats and sweet pastries drifting from the market stalls. The princess watched from a distance, feeling a sense of peace she had never known. Had spent her entire life in royal palaces surrounded by grandeur and ceremony. And yet it was here, in the simplicity of this village, that she felt most at home. A young girl, perhaps no older than 8, came running up to her, holding out a small bouquet of wild flowers. "For you," the girl said shyly, her cheeks flushed with the excitement of the celebration. The princess took the flowers, smiling gently at the child. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft with gratitude. "They're beautiful." The girl beamed, her eyes lighting up as she looked at the princess. "My mama says flowers bring good luck," she said, her voice full of innocence. The princess knelt down, looking into the girl's eyes. "Well, then I will carry them with me always," she said, her heart warmed by the gesture. As the night wore on, the princess joined in the dancing, the rhythm of the music filling her with joy. The villagers had no titles, no riches, yet there was a richness to their lives that transcended everything she had known. They lived with an open heart, embracing the beauty of each day, finding contentment in the simplest of things. The princess laughed as she twirled in the circle, the warmth of the fire and the laughter of the villagers surrounding her. She felt free, truly free for the first time in her life. The weight of the crown was gone, and in its place, there was something far more precious, a connection to the world, a connection to herself. As the festival came to an end and the stars began to twinkle above, the princess found a quiet spot. By the river, she sat on a large rock, watching the water flow gently past. Reflecting the light of the moon, she thought of her family, of the palace, of the life she had left behind, and yet, for the first time, she didn't feel torn between two worlds. She felt whole. Her journey had led her here, to this moment, to this peaceful stillness. She realized that she was no longer searching for something outside herself. Had found what she had been seeking all along: peace, contentment, and the understanding that the greatest treasure was not in what she could possess, but in what she could experience. And as the night stretched on, the princess closed her eyes, letting the sounds of the river and the gentle breeze fill her senses. She was at peace, knowing that no matter where her journey took her next, had already found the answer within herself. The search was over as the days passed in the quiet village. The princess found herself embracing the simple life more fully, had learned to live without the constant demands of royalty, without the weight of the throne pressing down on her every move. Every day, she felt herself shedding another layer of the past, those expectations, those duties, those roles she had once been forced to play. The life she had always known seemed to fade like a distant memory, as though it belonged to someone else, not the woman she was becoming. One morning, as the sky began to brighten with the first rays of dawn, the princess woke with a sense of peace that settled deep within her. Had been sleeping soundly under a simple roof with the hum of nature as her lullaby. There were no royal beds or silk sheets here, only a humble bed made of wooden beams, and a thick quilt made by the village women. But the comfort she felt now was not of opulence. It was something more profound, a peace that came from living in harmony with the earth and with oneself. She stood, stretching her arms above her head, feeling the cool morning air. The scent of dew and pine filled her senses. Had learned to rise with the sun, to greet the day not with haste, but with gratitude, as if each morning was a gift she had long overlooked in her past life. The village was still quiet, and she decided to go for a walk. The sound of the river flowing gently beside the village had always been a constant presence. It beckoned her now as a familiar companion as she walked slowly, her footsteps light on the grass, the birds overhead singing their morning songs. The world was still, and she felt a deep sense of belonging, as though she was part of something much bigger than herself. As she walked along the river's edge, she came across a group of children playing by the water. They were laughing, their voices light and full of joy as they skipped stones across the surface. Seeing their carefree laughter brought a smile to the princess's face, and she paused to watch them for a moment. One of the children, a young boy with a face full of freckles, looked up and noticed her standing there. He grinned, showing a gap-toothed smile. "Do you want to play?" he asked, his eyes sparkling with mischief. The princess chuckled, her heart warming at the invitation. "I don't think I'm very good at skipping stones," she said, smiling down at him. "You just have to try," he urged, running over to her with a stone in his hand. "Here, you can use this one." The princess hesitated for a moment, then, feeling the innocence and joy in the child's offer, took the stone from his hand. She knelt by the river's edge, tossing the stone into the water with a gentle flick of her wrist. It didn't skip as gracefully as the children's, but it caused a small ripple in the water, and she felt a thrill of accomplishment. "You did it," the boy exclaimed, his excitement contagious. "You're good at it." The princess smiled and stood up, brushing the dirt from her hands. "I suppose I am," she said, laughing softly. "It's not about being perfect, isn't it? It's about having fun, about trying new things." The boy nodded sagely, as though he understood the deeper truth of her words, though he was too young to fully comprehend. "Exactly," he said. "We're all just learning, one skip at a time." Her heart felt lighter as she watched the children play. They reminded her of the importance of living in the moment, embracing life without worrying about the end result. It was a lesson she had been learning over the past weeks, and one she would carry with her forever, that happiness, peace, and joy weren't to be sought in the grandiose or the perfect. They were found in the small, ordinary moments, the moments where we let go, where we laugh, where we try new things, and where we simply are. As she continued walking, the princess felt a deep sense of gratitude for the path she had taken. The journey had been long and difficult, but each step had brought her closer to herself. And although she had left the palace behind, she now realized realized that the palace had never truly left her. It had only been a reflection of what she had once believed was expected of her. What she had found here in this village by the river was something deeper. It was the freedom to be herself, the peace to live authentically. A week later, the princess received a letter from her mother. The handwriting was elegant and familiar, the royal seal still intact on the envelope. She hesitated for a moment before opening it, unsure of what to expect. Would it be a letter of longing, urging her to return? Would it be a message of understanding, acknowledging her need for this journey? As she unfolded the letter, she read the words slowly, letting them sink in. My dearest daughter, it has been some time since we last heard from you, and though we miss you dearly, we understand your decision to find your own way in the world. I know it has not been easy for you, and we respect the path you have chosen. Your father and I are proud of you, proud of the woman you have become. I trust that in your time away, you have found the peace you sought, and I hope that when you are ready, you will return to us. The kingdom remains here, waiting, but we know that you must first find yourself before you can lead us. Dot, we love you, and we will always be here for you. With all my heart, your mother. The princess sat down on the wooden bench by the river, the letter resting in her hands. She felt a surge of emotion, gratitude, love, and unexpectedly, a sense of release. Her parents, though they had once placed the weight of the kingdom on her shoulders, now seemed to understand her journey. They respected her need to find her own path, and their love was not conditional upon her return to the throne. It was a turning point for her, an acknowledgement that her journey had been valid, and that she was no longer the person she had once been. The princess who had once been tied to the throne, who had felt the heavy expectations of her family and her kingdom, was no more. In her place was a woman who had learned to embrace the world around her, who had discovered peace in the simple, ordinary moments of life. She folded the letter carefully, tucking it into her satchel. She stood and looked out at the river, the sunlight shimmering on the water's surface. The path ahead was still uncertain, but she felt ready to meet whatever came her way. For the first time, she was not burdened by the weight of expectation. She was free to live on her own terms. With a deep breath, the princess began walking again, her heart light and filled with hope. She no longer needed to search for answers. The answers had always been with her, waiting to be discovered. It wasn't the destination that mattered, it was the journey itself, and the beauty of living fully in each moment. And so she continued her journey, no longer a princess bound by duty, but a woman on her own path, ready to embrace whatever the world had to offer. She was no longer searching, she had found peace, and that peace would guide her wherever she went on. As the princess continued her journey, she began to understand more deeply the profound wisdom that the world had to offer, far beyond the royal walls that had once defined her existence. Every step she took now felt like a step toward a deeper connection with herself and the world around her. Path was less about destinations and more about experiences, moments that would shape the person she was becoming. One afternoon, after a long trek through the hills, the princess arrived at a quiet village tucked into a valley between two towering mountains. The village was small, with only a few stone cottages lining a narrow path. A thin veil of smoke rose from chimneys as the village went about its usual peaceful routine. Here, life moved slower, untouched by the demands of the outside world. It was the kind of place where people worked the land with their hands and found joy in the simple pleasures of daily life. The princess was welcomed by an older woman who had seen many seasons pass, her face lined with wisdom, her smile kind and inviting. You must be weary from your travels, the woman said as she led the princess into her humble cottage. The smell of fresh bread and herbs filled the air, and the fire crackled softly in the hearth. Thank you for your kindness, the princess replied, grateful for the warm welcome. Had grown accustomed to the hospitality of strangers during her travels, but it always surprised her how much generosity she encountered. Even in the most unexpected places, the woman, whose name was Elira, made tea from fresh herbs she had gathered that morning. The princess sat by the fire, watching the flickering flames, her thoughts a quiet hum in the background. Elira spoke little, but when she did, her words carried the weight of experience. It's not often we see travelers here, Elira said, her voice calm and steady. What brings you to our small village? Child, the princess paused, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. I thought about this many times before, why she had left the palace, what she was truly seeking. But it was only now in this quiet cottage that she could speak the truth without fear of judgment. I've come from far away from a place where I was meant to lead, to rule, the princess began, her voice softer than usual. But I realized I couldn't lead others until I understood myself. So I left. I've been searching for something, peace, I think, a sense of belonging. I thought that if I ran away, I would find what I was missing. Illyra listened quietly, nodding as the princess spoke. When she finished, Illyra smiled warmly, her eyes reflecting a deep understanding. Child, she said gently, the journey you speak of is one many of us take, though not always with the same words. We all seek something, peace, purpose, belonging, but what we fail to realize is that it's not the world we need to change. It's our hearts. The princess looked at Illyra, puzzled. But how do I change my heart? How do I find what I'm searching for? You've already begun, Illyra replied with a soft chuckle. By asking the right questions, by listening to your heart and allowing it to guide you instead of searching outside for what has always been within. The princess sat in silence, contemplating the words she had been seeking, always seeking. But it had never occurred to her that what she was looking for might not be something external at all. Perhaps she had been looking for approval, for validation, for a life that others expected of her. But now, as she sat in Illyra's cottage, she realized that what she truly needed was to stop seeking and simply be. The fire crackled, and the room grew warmer as they both sat in companionable silence, kind that only comes when two souls are content in each other's presence. The princess felt a deep sense of peace, a clarity that had been missing from her life for so long. She had been running away from her past, but perhaps it wasn't the past she needed to escape from. It was the future, the burden of who she thought she had to be that had been weighing on her. Illyra continued speaking, her voice rich with the wisdom of age. I've lived many years in this valley. We work the land, grow our food, raise our families. Pace is slow, but it's enough. It's the quiet life that gives us time to listen to the land, to each other, to our own hearts. The princess absorbed the woman's words like a sponge soaking up water. Is it really that simple? She asked. Just being. Illyra smiled, a twinkle in her eyes. Yes, child. But it's not simple in the way you think. It's simple because it doesn't require anything other than acceptance, accepting the life we have, the moments we're given, and the beauty that surrounds us. That evening, the princess lay down to sleep in a small bed by the window. The soft light of the moon bathed the room in a silvery glow, and she felt the weight of the day settle gently into her bones. She could hear the sounds of the night, the rustling of the wind, the distant calls of owls, the soft murmur of the river flowing nearby. For the first time in a long while, the princess didn't feel a need to rush. She didn't feel a pressure to achieve, to succeed, or to fulfill anyone else's expectations. She could simply be in this moment, in this place, and somehow that realization felt like the most profound freedom of all. Days passed, and the princess stayed in the valley, living alongside the villagers. She helped Illyra with her garden, learning about the herbs that grew wild in the hills, the plants that could heal or nourish, and the delicate balance of life that was maintained in the quiet corners of the earth. The villagers welcomed her as one of their own, though she remained an outsider in name. But to them, she was just another soul learning to live in harmony with the land, learning to live at peace with herself. The princess no longer longed for the throne or the accolades of others. She found joy in tending to the garden, in helping to harvest the fruit from the trees, in watching the sun rise and set over the mountains. Each moment was a gift, and she felt deeply connected to everything around her, the earth, the sky, the river, the people. One day, while walking along the river bank, the princess came across a group of children playing. They were splashing in the shallows, their laughter ringing through the air. Without thinking, she joined them, wading into the water and laughing along with them. Had forgotten how much she had missed the simple pleasure of play, the kind of joy that didn't require any thought or effort, just a pure, unfiltered experience of being alive. As the day drew to a close, and the sun dipped behind the mountains, casting a warm, golden light across the valley, the princess stood by the river, watching the water shimmer in the fading light. She felt at peace in a way she had never felt before, whole, complete, and content. I found what she was searching for, not in the grandeur of royalty, not in the duties that had once bound her, but in the quiet simplicity of life. It was a life that didn't ask for perfection, didn't demand anything other than the willingness to be present. It was enough, more than enough. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, the princess closed her eyes, feeling the cool night air on her face. She whispered a quiet thanks to the universe, to the journey that had led her here, to this moment, this peace. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she didn't need to. She was exactly where she needed to be, and that, she realized, was enough. As the seasons shifted, the princess felt herself becoming more attuned to the natural rhythms of life in the valley. Each day, the world seemed to grow simpler and more profound, and with it, the princess's sense of self deepened. The path she had once thought of as an escape now felt more like a returning to herself, to the earth, and to the quiet truths that had always been there, waiting for her to notice. One crisp autumn morning, after several months of living with the villagers, the princess decided to take a longer walk up the mountain that bordered the valley. The air was fresh, with a bite of coolness that heralded the coming of winter. The leaves had turned brilliant shades of gold and red, their colors painting the hills in rich hues. The mountain, majestic and untamed, stood as a silent guardian of the valley, offering its rugged beauty to anyone willing to climb its heights. With a light pack on her back and a quiet resolve, the princess began her ascent. The path was steep, in places the rocks slippery with morning dew, but the view was breathtaking. Forests and fields stretched as far as the eye could see, the patchwork quilt of nature's finest work. She walked slowly, taking time to stop and breathe in the crisp mountain air, allowing herself to marvel at the beauty surrounding her. As she climbed higher, her thoughts naturally turned inward. It had been months since she had heard from her family, since she had left the royal palace behind. Though she occasionally felt the pull of her former life, it no longer felt like a weight on her heart. She was no longer bound by duty or expectation. She had learned to listen to herself, to trust her instincts, to find peace in the simple, quiet moments. The mountain path wound through dense forests, and with each step, the sounds of the village faded away, replaced by the peaceful stillness of the wilderness. Eventually, she reached a small clearing at the summit, where she could see the entire valley spread out before her. The valley was bathed in golden light, rivers shimmering like a thread of silver running through the land. The princess stood at the edge of the clearing, her heart full of gratitude. It had come so far from the palace, where she had once felt trapped by her royal duties, to this very moment where she could stand free and at peace, surrounded by the world's quiet beauty. The mountain had taught her patience and perseverance, but it had also given her the space to reflect on everything she had learned. She sat on a large rock, feeling the cool stone against her skin. The wind swept through the trees, rustling the leaves and carrying with it the fresh scent of pine and earth. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sounds of nature fill her mind. It was then that she heard footsteps behind her. Turning around, she saw Lyra, the kind baker from the village, standing at the edge of the clearing. The elderly woman's face was peaceful, yet there was something in her eyes that seemed to carry the weight of knowing. "You've come far," Lyra said softly, her voice carrying over the wind. "I thought I might find you here at the top of the world." The princess smiled, feeling a warmth in her heart at the sight of her friend. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice steady but reflective. "I've come so far physically, and yet I feel like I've only just begun to understand what it means to be free." Lyra nodded, stepping closer and sitting beside her on the rock. "The journey you've taken is not just through the world," she said. "It's a journey through your own heart. Sometimes we must wander far from where we began before we can truly see who we are." The princess turned to Lyra, her heart stirred by the depth of the woman's words. "I've learned so much already, but there are still moments when I question myself, when I wonder if I've made the right choice in leaving the palace, leaving my family." "You did what you needed to do," Lyra replied, her gaze steady and wise, "and in doing so, you gave yourself the chance to learn what your heart really desires. You left behind the role that was given to you, and in doing so, you created space for the person you were meant to become." The princess took a deep breath, feeling the weight of Lyra's words settle into her soul. "I'm not sure who that person is yet," she confessed, "but I think I'm starting to understand that it doesn't matter. I'm becoming who I am meant to be, piece by piece, moment by moment." Lyra smiled, placing a gentle hand on the princess's shoulder. "That's the truth of it, child. Becoming who you are doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens every day, in the small choices, the small moments of reflection. the quiet steps you take toward understanding yourself. And in the end, it is the journey, not the destination, that shapes us. The princess looked out over the valley once more, feeling a profound sense of peace wash over her. She had spent so many years thinking that her life had to be a grand story, filled with purpose and achievement. But now she understood that it was the small, quiet moments that truly made up the fabric of life. It was in the walks along the river, the laughter of children, the shared cups of tea, and the acceptance of her own heart's desires. "You've taught me so much," the princess said quietly, her voice filled with gratitude. "I thought I needed to escape to find peace, but now I see that peace was never something to find, it was something to be." Alira's eyes softened. "With understanding, exactly, my dear. And now that you know this, you will never lose it. Peace is always there within you, even when the world around you is chaotic. It is the quiet in your heart that allows you to find stillness no matter where you are." The princess smiled, feeling a weight lift from her chest. She had come so far, not just physically, but emotionally, had found something she never expected, a peace that wasn't dependent on titles or status, but on being true to herself. Together, the two women sat in the clearing for a long while, watching the sunset paint the sky with deep hues of orange and pink. It felt as if the world was holding its breath, as if the moment itself was a gift. When the last light of the day faded, Alira stood and offered her hand to the princess. "It's time to return," she said softly. "The world will be waiting for you, as it always has. But now you will meet it with a heart that is whole, and with a spirit that is free." The princess took Alira's hand, feeling the strength of the woman's touch and the depth of her wisdom. Together they descended the mountain, leaving behind the vast horizon, but carrying the peace they had found in the simplicity of the journey. As they walked back to the village, the princess knew that her journey was not over. There would be more paths to walk, more moments to embrace, but she no longer felt lost. Had discovered the key to living fully, to be present, to be kind to herself, and to appreciate the beauty of each step along the way. For the first time, the princess felt at home, not in the palace, not in any title, but in the life she was building for herself, one quiet moment at a time. As the days stretched on and the seasons slowly shifted, the princess began to feel that her journey was coming full circle. Though the world outside still called to her, there was something undeniably peaceful about returning to the heart of the valley, the quiet simplicity of village life, the rhythm of the river, the laughter of children playing by the water. All of it had become part of her now, woven into the fabric of who she was becoming. One late autumn morning, as the golden hues of the leaves had begun to fade, the princess found herself standing on the edge of the village, watching the sun rise over the mountains. The air was crisp, and the sky above was a brilliant shade of violet. A light breeze rustled the remaining leaves, and for the first time in months, she felt no yearning for the future. She had come to realize that she was already exactly where she needed to be. Alira, as always, appeared quietly by her side, offering a warm smile as she gazed at the princess. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" the princess said softly, her eyes lingering on the landscape that stretched out before them. "It is," Alira agreed, her voice calm and steady. "The beauty is always here. It's just that sometimes we need to stop and look closely to see it." The princess nodded, the weight of Alira's words sinking deep within her. Had spent so much of her life rushing from one thing to the next, always chasing after something: status, recognition, purpose. But now she understood that all she had ever needed was the quiet peace of living in the moment. Here, in the valley, in this simple village, she had found everything she needed. "I've been thinking," the princess said, her voice reflective. "Maybe it's time to return home, to the palace, to the kingdom. I left seeking peace, but now I feel that peace has already found me. Maybe my journey is no longer just about escaping. It's about going back to who I am now, to lead with the wisdom I've gained from this place." Alira turned to look at her, a knowing smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "You're ready," she said, her voice warm with pride. "You've found the strength in yourself, and the world will see you for who you truly are, not the role you were born into. But remember, peace is not a place, it's a state of being. Wherever you go, carry that peace within you." The princess closed her eyes for a moment, letting the words settle in her heart. She had been searching for something outside of herself, something that could bring her happiness, fulfillment. But now, she realized that it had always been inside her, waiting for her to acknowledge it. Her journey had not been about finding the right place to be. It had been about finding the right way to be in the world. A few weeks later, after quiet reflection and with Alira's blessing, the princess packed her things and began the journey back to the palace. The village watched her go with a mixture of fondness and sadness. She had become part of their world and they had become part of hers. As she walked away from the valley, the princess turned back one last time to look at the place she had come. To love so deeply, she didn't know what awaited her at the palace, the throne, the people. The kingdom, it was all still there waiting. But now she was no longer the same woman who had fled in search of something she couldn't define. She was whole, she was at peace when she returned to the palace. The gates opened before her as they always had, but this time the air felt different. It wasn't filled with the weight of expectation or the looming sense of duty. The princess walked into the grand hall with a new sense of purpose. Her role as heir to the throne was still hers to bear, but it no longer defined her. Had discovered that she could lead with a heart full of compassion, a mind open to the wisdom she had gained from the quiet places in the world. Her parents, upon seeing her, recognized the change in her. The once tense atmosphere around her was now filled with understanding and warmth. Her mother embraced her tightly, tears of joy welling in her eyes. Her father, the king, placed a hand on her shoulder, proud of the woman she had become. "You've come back to us," the queen said, her voice thick with emotion. "You have found yourself." The princess smiled, feeling no need to explain what had transpired during her absence. It was enough to simply be there in the moment with her family, knowing that she was no longer searching for anything. "I've come back, yes," the princess replied, her voice steady, "but not as the woman I was before. I've come back as someone who has learned to live fully, to lead with my heart and not just my title. I'm not here to be the ruler you once thought I should be. I'm here to be the ruler I was always meant to be." Her father nodded, a look of approval on his face. "And we trust you," he said. "You've learned what it means to lead not just with strength, but with understanding." From that day forward, the princess became not only a ruler, but a beacon of wisdom, peace, and compassion for her kingdom. Her reign was one of quiet strength, not built on the expectations of others, but on the foundations of love and inner peace she had found through her journey. As she sat in the palace's gardens, the scent of jasmine and roses filling the air, the princess reflected on how far she had come. Her heart was full, not of duties and responsibilities, but of the simple joys of life, the sound of birds singing, the warmth of the sun on her face, the love of her family, and the knowledge that peace had always been within her. In the end, the princess realized that her true journey was not about finding a place or a purpose outside herself. It was about discovering who she truly was, understanding that the peace sought had always lived within her, waiting for the right moment to bloom. And now, with the peace of the mountains and the quiet wisdom of the valley in her heart, she was ready to lead her people not as a princess bound by duty, but as a woman who had learned to live with grace, compassion, and an open heart. And with that, the princess began the next chapter of her life, knowing that whatever came her way, she was not only ready for it, but that she was already at home in herself.